Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Product Management Mastermind, a community for PMs to get advice, share advice, and build relationships. Today, we have a special session on AI ML product management, what makes it unique, and what areas you need to focus on to improve your skills in this area. Today, we are very grateful to have Dr. Marilee Nika here with us to share her wisdom. So just to let you all know the format for today's discussion, we're going to start with some initial questions that we've sort of planned out for Dr. Marilee here. And then we will move into Q&A from our community. If you are just hearing us for the first time, the Product Management Mastermind community has just recently grown to 10,000 members on LinkedIn. We encourage you to find us on LinkedIn and join the community. So before we jump in, we'll do some quick intros. Again, my name is Felix. I am the Product Management Mastermind founder. I have here with me Akshay and Jayanth, who are also leading the community with me. My background, I've been a product manager for about 5 years now. Previous to that was a computer engineer for about 5 years, and I used an MBA to make the pivot from engineering to product manager. I started this community because I love helping other PMs learn and grow and connect. I find that it was the most impactful way that I grew in my career. So I try to facilitate that through this community. And with that, I'll hand it off to Akshaya to do a quick intro.
Thank you, Felix. My name is Akshaya. I'm currently a PM at Wish. My journey into product actually started with me graduating and starting a job as a hardware engineer, taking a little break at project management, and then eventually landing a role in product. For me, outside of work, I guess I'm a part of this community, but I also am very huge on mentorship and networking on LinkedIn. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here speaking with you today. And I'll pass it off to Jayanth.
Hey guys, really excited to chat with you, Dr. Nika, today. I'm Jayanth. I'm a product manager at Capital One, working on our internal fraud and risk detection services. Similar to Felix and Akshaya, I have a mixed engineering and UX research background. That was kind of my tangent before jumping over into product. Like Felix, I love helping other people level up in their product management careers or break into the field. And groups like the PM Mastermind, as well as others, are my way to help others grow in their careers. Really excited to participate, and I'll kick it off to Felix to introduce our special guest.
As I was mentioning, we're super excited to have Marilee here with us today to share her wisdom from 10 years of experience bringing AI products to life at companies like Google and now Meta. So Marilee, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your journey into product and AI product management?
Yeah, sounds good. And hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. By the way, I have to say, I just love your community. And Felix and I met through Clubhouse. I think you were hosting some meetings there. So yes, I'm Marilee. I have a PhD in machine learning. And after graduating from my PhD, I thought that, the natural path would be for me to become a data scientist or a machine learning engineer, until someone said, hey, there's this role, it's called product management. And I had no idea what that was. That was 10 years ago. I didn't know what it was. Ended up joining Google in a different ladder. But then this person had stuck to me. I said, product management, I need to look into it. And as I was working at Google, I just figured out what it was. And I was just mesmerized. I said, oh my God, this is the best thing that has happened. I need to become a product manager. So I actually switched ladders within Google. They had this great PM rotation program, so I could kind of try to be a PM for like 6 months, see if I like it, see if it liked me. And then I eventually interviewed and converted internally. And I've been a PM since then, and it's the best decision I ever made.
Nice. That's an awesome story. Thanks for sharing. And that is a really fun fact. You were our guest speaker on the very first Product Management Mastermind session, I believe. It was almost 3 years ago now on Clubhouse. That was like one of the first conversations we ever had, I think, kind of open with the community. So yeah, fun fact.
This is crazy. I can't believe it's been 3 years since the boom of Clubhouse. Oh my God.
Crazy. Wow. Okay, well, with that, let's jump in. I'll hand it off to Akshay to get our conversation started.
Yes. Thank you, Felix. And Marilee, thanks again for joining us tonight. So let's jump right into some of the questions that we have for you. So for the next 20-ish minutes, we'll be diving into the questions that we have, and then we'll go through some of the questions our audience has submitted through the LinkedIn community. So first off, setting the scene, how would you define AI, ML product management? And maybe also help our audience understand AI and ML and why those terms are often used interchangeably.
Yep, this is a great question. So, a generalist PM helps their team and their company build and ship the right product. So it's all about coming up with ideas and then being able to get market validation, finding the right user, creating an MVP, executing, and so on. Now, in AI PM, you help your team and your company solve the right problem. So you have a team of research scientists or machine learning engineers, and essentially you want to tell them, hey, I have this crazy idea about an app, but I don't know if that's even possible. So in AI ML PM, you're trying to find the middle ground of whether what you have in mind is kind of a viable business, whether it's feasible technically, and whether people would want it. So it's like building products from 0 to 1, but with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of questions in there. So you're trying to figure out whether your crazy idea is even a thing. Here's a good example. I was walking downtown San Francisco the other day, and I saw someone wearing a T-shirt that I really liked. But obviously, you cannot just walk up to people and just ask, "Hey, where did you get this from?" So I was thinking to myself, it would be amazing if there would be a way for me to. I mean, this is also creepy, but it's good for the example. If I could take a photo of them and kind of have the photo search the web for that exact T-shirt and tell me where to purchase it from. So this is the kind of crazy ideas you come up with as a PM. And then I would go to a research scientist in my team and say, hey, can we create a model that takes as an input a photo and the output being where I can buy the assets that you can derive from that photo? And then there's a lot of 0 to 1 grad work, finding product market fit, making sure if people would actually pay, figuring out what on earth quality would mean in there, and so on. And to answer the second question around AI and ML and the difference, AI is kind of the overall area and the bubble of, hey, being able to insert intelligence into a program. And machine learning is the algorithm that is able to give us the possibility to actually do so.
Awesome. Thanks for answering that, Marilee. A lot of what you said sounds, very similar to what a lot of product managers that might not be in the AI and ML field, a lot of like what they're actually doing on a day-to-day basis. And it feels like um, there's this inaccurate assumption that if you want to be an AI or ML product manager, you have to write you've done your own machine learning models. You can do all of the math behind, understanding how those models are generated. Can you talk a little bit more about this and what a product manager in this space, actually has to know in order to be able to do their day to day?
Yes, and this is a great question. And actually, I am teaching a course. It's been 2 years that I've been teaching it. It's called AI Product Management. It's available on Maven Live and offline on my website, marilyniga.com. And essentially, what I'm telling people is, hey, you don't need to code to be an AI PM. You don't need a software engineering background. You don't need a machine learning PhD. You just need to understand the basics of machine learning. What does training mean? What can you do when it comes to enhancing your product with AI? And the answer is you can add personalization, you can add recommendation, you can add automation. So anything we see, for example, if we're watching Netflix and then at the end of the show, you get a pop-up saying, hey, you just finished watching Stranger Things. Now we believe you would like Umbrella Academy instead of like some romantic comedy or something like this. So the answer is you don't need a technical background. You just need to have a passion about learning new things. And you need to just don't be overwhelmed or scared or anything like that. These are just biases. It's not, if anything, I have a technical background and I needed to forget what I knew in order to be able to do the strategic work required when you're an AI PM versus the actual coding and so on.
Awesome. Thank you for jumping in there. I mean, I think you call out a couple things that maybe we could double click on for our audience. One thing you mentioned was about sort of quality, right? When you were talking about sort of coming up with these ideas and going to your research scientist to understand, how do we go and build this new thing? Can you talk a little bit about some of like the core tenets for AIML, like quality and some of these other aspects that you mentioned?
Yes. Quality is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to being a product manager within the AIML space. This is because it's just not tangible. You cannot measure it from the user perspective. What does this mean? In my example about me taking a photo of a t-shirt and being able to get as an output the website of where I can purchase that t-shirt, the research scientist will train a model and they will come to me and they will say, hey, I trained this model, but it only works 7 out of 10 times. And then it's up to me to say, is that good enough? Is that going to be a bad experience? And this is where strategy comes in. And you're looking at strategy for the business on its whole, and you say, well, am I going to be the first company in the world to bring in something like this? Or am I going to be like the second or the third or the fourth? If you're the first, then you're kind of the pioneer and you want to launch something that's, good enough, but you want to be the first. You want to be the innovative person so that you can create a user base, and then you get more data and you improve your model so you improve the quality. But then if you're kind of the second or the third company building it, you do want to, at the very least, meet the bar of anyone else that has launched it. So if you're in the AIML, strategy is a huge part. And the responsibility is also very, very high because you will need to to make strategic decisions like this. Also, you need to understand what quality means and that it's not a matter of just waiting so that you can increase the quality. Sometimes you may need to launch a feature for you to get more data in order to improve it. Like sometimes there's just a dead end. There's nothing you can do other than accept that minimum bar. So lots of strategy, lots of decisions, and it's all on the PM, and that's what makes awesome that role.
Awesome. Thank you for breaking that down for us. And actually, along those lines, um, you've mentioned some like what ways of measuring the model's performance, for example, saying it's right X many times out of, let's say, 10, versus also making a strategic decision on when to say, hey, this is a dead end, or hey, this is actually working well, let's go to the next step. So I guess, could you help us better understand what metrics product managers should be focusing on to better understand the success of their ML product, especially given that such solutions can be very iterative and oftentimes lead to a dead end? So how do you kind of think through that, or help our community think through that?
At the end of the day, the reason you're coming up with a solution that leverages AI models is because of some goal you have. So you do need to treat this question like every other product problem. For example, am I trying to increase retention? Am I a PM on Netflix and I'm trying to just literally keep people binge watching for as much as I can? Or am I starting scratching something from scratch and a completely 0 to 1 product, and I just want to find product market fit? So if it's the first, you look at the model quality to be good enough, and you can do like an A/B test and say, okay, I'm going to launch this in like 5% of the population, and I'm going to look out for the metric which I care about, like retention, for the example of Netflix. And then if that feature actually moves the needle, then it means, okay, this is a good feature. I should definitely launch it to the entire population. If not, then you should probably say, okay, maybe my AI enabled feature is not going to do anything. For the other example, the 0 to 1, this is where it's the more strategic decision that I was talking about before. But as I teach on my course, on every decision you need to make in AI PM needs to be a holistic decision for all the standard metrics we know, like engagement, retention. And I had a student the other day, and they said, "Why do I care about the standard PM metrics if I'm an AI ML PM?" And I said, because it all comes down to the user, right? We need to satisfy our users, solve their pain points, and make sure we have smart solutions in doing so. So I hope this helps.
So, Marilee, I have a follow-up question based on this. So, I've done a couple of like ML side projects and, taken a couple of courses here and there around it. And I'm just curious, when you're taking kind of those courses where they're more theoretical, right? Where they're trying to teach you, hey, like here's how you would build, you would build a linear regression, for example, which is a very simple model that you could do, or whatever, right? They walk through metrics on their side, right? I don't want to go too deep into it just for our audience, but you could have a confusion matrix where it's talking about, your true positives that you have or your false positives and so on. Or there's other metrics like ROC or stuff like that. How do you reconcile kind of like, for me, I've always struggled when I'm doing ML at my job of like, what's actually a good number for that? Because like, for example, with a lot of those numbers in your project, like you're trying to get it to 100%, which you're never going to be able to do. So how do you reconcile your college ML 101 class with reality,
Well, that's the thing. You need to realize that you don't need to know all these things. You just leave it to the engineers, you leave it to the scientists. What you need to care about is what affects the users. If the quality, if 7 out of the 10 times I'm going to have an amazing quality, and then 3 out of the 10 times it's just going to be an awful user experience, then that's what matters. Um, so you have, as I said, like you need to set your priorities, and you shouldn't do the job of the engineers for them. So you kind of let go and you learn how to manage the product and the AI problem rather than the model training itself. And it's difficult. If you've done it before and you know how to do it, you kind of want to, roll up your sleeves and get your hands there dirty, but these can backfire as well. As I said, like when I started off, I was very, very, I just recent grad from my PhD. And I realized, okay, I'm going to focus on my strategic stuff. I'm not going to do the actual training. So yeah, user focused metrics, and only care about metrics that affect the user experience, which is false accepts, false rejects.
Thanks, Marilee. That makes sense.
Awesome. I think the next question sort of is in a line with this, right? But when we're talking about success, this brings me back to just the overall life cycle for a product and how you go from, launch to, at Google, we say, it's not finished till you land it. So you're actually looking at success and things like that. So for ML, what's the product life cycle like, right? How does it differ from, maybe more traditional agile product development? Is there anything that PMs need to really keep in mind when it comes to this overall life cycle for an ML product?
This is a great question. From my personal experience, there is a trap. The trap is you will have a data scientist team and you will have an engineering team, and you're gonna kind of try to see what you can leverage that they produce in order to bring some nice experience to life that fits in with the overall business goals. Now, the trap is something I call the shiny object trap. So you do not want to be building AI/ML features for the sake of AI/ML, right? Um, just setting this aside, parentheses. I'm coaching young startup founders, and this person came to me the other day and said, "Hey, I have this startup, and we create fantastic like vacation bundles and so on, and I want to use ML and AI/ML." And I said, do you have something that works right now? He's like, no, but I want to use AI/ML to make it work. And I said, no, 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 no. Never use AI/ML on your MVP. Start by faking something, getting product market fit first. And then after you have a lot of data and it scales, then you get AI/ML to improve the matching. So the first part of the product development lifecycle is making sure you work with your team in order to find the need in the market. Whereas if you start with a generic product, you come up with an idea for something that exists as a pain point. So the difference is you already have a team, but you need to give them a problem that is something that actually exists in the world. So it's kind of a bit more complicated because the beginning can set you up for failure. So you need to make sure you are set up for success. Other than that, the finding product market fit is more in line with 0 to 1 products where you just start from scratch. You have extra challenges like not having enough data is a challenge. Figuring out where on earth to get data, figuring out what quality is, figuring out if your MVP is gonna have AI ML or if it's not gonna have AI ML. Um, but every single step is kind of sprinkled in with some extra challenges. But that makes the landing better and sweeter. So that's kind of it. You manage the problem rather than the product along the way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
We
we would
Go ahead.
be, oh, go ahead, Felix. Awesome. I was just going to say, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about all of the generative AI stuff that's going around, especially with ChatGPT, Stable Diffusion, OpenAI's DALL-E. What are your thoughts around some of these enhancements and how they would basically change the product, like change product development landscape in the future?
So with ChatGPT, I make more for less, meaning I work more efficiently for less amount of time. I create better documentation and better texts without having to use my brain as much. And I don't know, I just feel I'm smarter, or I come across as smarter with ChatGPT. And and I was just reading this article 3 days ago that said, "Oh, ChatGPT will take our jobs," and I'm like, "Oh my god, no! ChatGPT makes my job so much easier, and it makes me work more effectively and more efficiently and speak in a better way at the presentation because every single thing I put together, if I pass it on to ChatGPT, it is going to make it better 100% of the time. So on my day to day, I'm coming up with a pitch deck and I will add in the title on ChatGPT. It's going to make it better for me. I'm looking for a nice bio prop so that I can get stakeholders excited for my idea. And it is like, oh, it's improving. It's like we're going to change the lives by, introducing fitness to the day to day. It's just so much better. But it also saves time because when I'm looking for, what is my audience? Who do I want to focus on? It's going to give me a list of 10 user personas that are like very well thought out with like percentages for the country. It's just Google and intelligence all at one meshed up. So yeah, it's the best and I do more for less and it's great.
Definitely agree with that. And I'll pass it off to Jayan.
Yeah, Marley, we have one last question before we jump into the audience questions here. And I think you've kind of answered this, but would love to get your take on it. When do you know when machine learning is the right solution for a problem? How do you assess that? Especially, when you're going back to your startup founders example, when you're working with some of these folks, like how do you make that recommendation?
It all comes down to these use cases. Do you need to sprinkle in personalization, recommendation, suggestion, matching? It's usually within this realm where you will need AI/ML. Now, it's so important to experiment and to do these A/B tests I talked about because even if in theory everything sounds so much better with AI, the actual practice may not be the same. Here's an example. I had downloaded this custom keyboard for my iPhone, and I was using it for so long. I swear it could predict what I wanted to say, and I was just typing one character, and it would just fill out the entire sentence. I'm like, yes, this is great. And then they had a pop up to say, hey, we're testing out an algorithm to make typing smarter or something like that. Do you want to opt in? I'm like, yes, I want to opt in. And the second I opted in, it was just awful. I was just sending typos to everyone and it was just writing jokes. It was just awful, awful. And I could not revert back to my previous version. So AIML is not always great, and the AIML improvements to your existing AIML may be bad. So, my advice to people is if you want to use AIML, be ready to roll back immediately if something goes bad, and don't be greedy. If you have something that's good enough, just don't touch it. Just maintain it. You don't need to make sure to go from that 8.10, 8 out of 10 quality to 8.5 out of 10. So AIML does not mean better, but it does mean cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Marilee. That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to hand it out to Felix to go through some of our audience questions here.
Absolutely. So again, thanks so much, Marilee, for being with us. We did reach out to our product management mastermind community to see if they had any questions for you regarding AI ML, and we got a few good ones here. So I'll start off with a question from Brandon in Canada. He wants to know, how do you get around the misconceptions in the market around AI? I think what he's saying here is essentially, some people just don't really trust it. They don't really believe in it. And so he wants to know, what strategies or tactics have you used to persuade users who are unfamiliar with AI methods to gain more trust in the technology? So we're talking about end users, being skeptical about AI capabilities. Is there anything you would share?
Yes. Like everything else, whenever we're introducing a change in the day to day or the routine of someone, people are going to react. This is like the very first thing. I remember when iPhone came out and Steve Jobs was holding it on the presentation. He's like, "Hey, here's the iPhone. Oh, there's no keyboard." Everyone was just they were like, "Oh my god, what is this? How am I gonna use my phone without a keyboard? It's gonna break. It's gonna be full of fingerprints." Da da da. Now, show me one person that has an iPhone with a keyboard. So the answer is you need to expect a reaction and you need to kind of deflate it as much as you can early on. Good strategies are help sender articles. Just write an article to say, hey, here's how this works. Number two, give controls to people and tell them, hey, whatever you opt in, you can opt out from. Any data we collect, we can delete it for you. So give them the power, give them the reassurance, and also be able to explain what they're going to gain if they opt in or if they are going to use this AIML model. And I think it's like all other things. Just there are people that are more innovation friendly and they do want to gadget friendly and they do want to try new things and they're just late adopters. So when you create your product, make sure to target the right audience, especially if it's like very very niche AI algorithm there.
Thanks, Marilee. We have a second question from Brandon, and he wanted to ask, what's your approach to prioritizing features on deep learning products? And a lot of these deep learning models, the performance impact is often unknown just because deep learning can be pretty iterative and experimental in nature.
Yes, and when it comes to this, you always stick to the standard prioritization model, which is ease of implementation and user satisfaction. So you want to do the least possible that you can in order to achieve the maximum possible happy users. And of course, there are so many challenges in AI/ML. Like you are gonna spend weeks training models, or you're gonna wait around for weeks until you can get the very first iteration, depending on what it is, how much data you have, and so on. So it always comes down to ease of implementation, but here it translates to actually, how long it's going to take to train, how much data you need, how long you need to collect the data, and so on. Now, I really like the RICE scoring model, the prioritization model. So you have like the reach, you have impact, you have confidence, and then you divide it by E. I don't know. Are you guys aware of this? The RICE prioritization model?
Yeah, RICE is
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll probably put a link to that
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. So you can kind of figure out a way to adapt it when it comes to it. But I think the most important is what's under kind of the divide, which is the effort. Effort meaning AI training, how long it's going to take. And mind you, it costs a lot of money to collect data. It costs a lot of money and effort to train models. And speaking of generative AI, I'm sure you all tried out the Lensa app where you could generate models of yourselves. And the thing is, you go in the app and you upload photos of yourself, and they say, "Hey, give us money because we just cannot train this model unless we have, all this huge computational power, and it costs money." So, you even put money in so that they train the photos for you. So, effort in AI means money, time, headcount, and effort generally. So, effort and user impact.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that, Marilee. And the last question that we're going to take from the community is actually a personal question of mine, because I work with a lot of data scientists on different types of ML models for listing quality and compliance at Wish. So with all this conversation again around generative AI, I've been thinking about how we could kind of leverage some of the in a sense, open source models that are put out there for the problems that I set out to solve as a product manager. And oftentimes I find that I'm not the expert on the AI or ML, as you said, and as a product manager, I don't need to be, but I do want to be aware of such solutions and ensure we consider them. So do you have any tips for product managers on thinking through innovative ways of leveraging some of these things that are coming out from other companies or just posted online as open source to be able to use some of this to creatively solve problems for their customers?
This is a good question, and I think I will answer it in a different way. I think it comes down to making trade-offs. So when you're in AI ML, trade-offs are like even more important than previously and even more challenging. So I think when you have a problem in hand and you're like, hey, there's a t-shirt and I want to be able to see where I can buy that t-shirt from a photo. And there are many different ways to go about doing it. Obviously, you can go to your engineers and say, hey, there's this cool technology that can do this, but you can come up with more ways that I can achieve this that I, as a PM, do not have the knowledge. I've never seen it before. And then they can come to you with all these different options, and you can kind of assess the trade-offs together. Trade-offs can be um, cost, how long it's going to take, quality, the niche, whether it's research or whether it's been proven, experimentation, and so on. So yeah, trade-offs very, very difficult to achieve. And I guess the follow up to this is how on earth do we keep up to these new niche areas and technologies that can come up? And what I recommend is subscribing to daily newsletters, daily, not weekly, daily newsletters. So, and make it part of your day to day. Seriously, just go in, see what's the latest. And there is a good example that I love. It's called The Download by MIT Technology Review, or TLDR. They're not necessarily AI centric, but nowadays, if you go there, all you'll see is like, oh, generative AI and what it is it going to take our jobs and so on. So, latest developments in tech, and I recommend people just to get out there. Also, one last thing, don't be afraid to read through research articles as well, because this is where you'll find the cool stuff that haven't been hitting the market yet. So, archive is a good place. For research that's published, and Google had a great research blog as well, and Meta, of course.
Hey, one thing I'll quickly plug for people trying to find news. Techmeme.com is really great. They aggregate a lot of other news websites, so they try to get you like, okay, what's the top 5-10 articles that you should be reading. In addition to that, going to your point, Marilee, about reading research articles. Research articles can be dense. And one thing I learned for my degree is actually how to read research articles. So can you give maybe like a 2-minute primer of if someone is looking at a research paper, how they should be reading it and what they should look for?
Abstract, always the abstract. You see what people are trying to do, and then skip the middle and go to the end of the abstract. So, hey, in this article, we're gonna try to assess whether using this technology to this amount of people for this experiment is gonna, and then they have the hypothesis, and then at the end they're like, actually we found nothing, or actually this worked. And then if you do get access to the full article, because sometimes it's not publicly available, go at the very end of the research article, which is the conclusion or the summary. Skip the rest. The rest is like methodology. Not that, I mean, don't skip it if you're interested in learning how they did it. But if you read through everything, you're just not gonna get through even two within, I don't know, 10 minutes. So yeah, the abstract is a fantastic way to see. And also, like the company websites and blogs like Google and Meta, they have a great explanation that's a bit less technical, less mathematical. That I think is great to scan through.
All right, awesome. Let's definitely check that out. So Bonus round. Before we wrap up, I
Okay.
thought it would be fun if we just did like a rapid fire get to know Dr. Marilee for like a few minutes. You cool with that? I promise no hard ones. It should be all really
Let's
easy.
do it. Let's do it.
All
All
right,
right.
let's do it. Okay. Read a book or watch TV/a movie?
TV movie, I would say.
Okay.
I read too much all day.
Okay,
Yes.
that's good. So what's the last I guess thing that you watched that you would recommend? Or what's top
Oh,
of
The
mind?
White Lotus. The White Lotus. I'm just obsessed with that show, especially season two. Mind blowing. And the music as well is now playing everywhere. It's going viral. So yeah, White Lotus, watch it. It's amazing.
Okay, White Lotus. I have not watched that one. I'll add it
Okay.
to my list. All right, next one: beach versus mountains.
Beach. I am Greek. I grew
Uh,
up by the beach. It's just, there's no question there.
nice, nice. So I'm thinking, what Santorini is your recommendation?
Santorini for sure, but not just Santorini. Like every island in
Okay,
Greece is beautiful. Santorini is the most popular one, but there are others that are equal as how much pretty they are, but even better.
what's the last beach you visited?
Last beach I visited, it's in Corinth, which is in the Peloponnese, and it's not an island, but it's just gorgeous. So if people want to go to Athens and do a little road trip, it's just an hour away from Athens, so it's super good.
Nice. Okay, last one. We're talking AIML, so I have to ask: when's the last time you used ChatGPT, and what did you use it for?
Oh, it was like 10 minutes ago. It- well, 10 minutes before our talk. It's because I'm preparing for my new cohort for the AIPM course, and it's going to be on February 6th. And I wanted to send out an email welcoming everyone that has signed up. And I just wrote something nice, but I put it on ChatGPT and it made it so much more welcoming and warm. And I'm like, so that's how I used it.
That is awesome. That is a great way to use ChatGPT. Okay, sweet. Well, with that, thanks again for joining us, Marilee, dropping all these gems, sharing your wisdom from over 10 years in AIML. We really appreciate it. Before we go, would you mind just sharing, quickly again, more about your course, where people can find you?
Yes, sounds good. So I have a live course for AIML. It starts on February 6th. So you can just go on any of my profiles, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and you'll find a link to it on the Maven website. But I also have the same course on an offline version. You can find it on my website, marilyniga.com. And or just reach out to me if you have any questions. I would love to network and meet more people that are passionate about AI.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you to you again, and to our community for listening in. This is one of our very first sort of conversations that we are recording to share. So, we're excited to be sharing more. And if anyone in the community has any ideas on a topic they want to hear about or questions that they want answered, we definitely encourage you to share them in our LinkedIn group. And yeah, before we head out, again, thanks so much for joining the Product Management Mastermind, a community for PMs to get advice, share advice, and build relationships. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Product Management Mastermind on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcasting platform. And remember to leave us a rating and review so that we can reach more listeners. We appreciate your support.